Hey everyone, and welcome back to another GTA Online video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Friday. Of course, yesterday, 7 new survival maps were added into GTA Online, and along with that, they pay out double money for a week. Well, I've spent plenty of time on each of these new maps, and today I'm going to give you guys some information on what I think the best maps to play are, what the worst maps to play are, strategies for those best maps, payouts, and then we'll talk about what happens after you reach Wave 10 because these new maps can be played on an endless option. So let's begin by talking about what the worst maps to play are. The first map that I do not recommend playing at all is Zancudo. It's very deceiving because it looks like there's plenty of cover and places to break line of sight from the enemies. The only problem is that the enemies are spawning in many different points from all different directions, and because the cover only protects you from one spot, it does not cover your back. You're going to have to watch behind you, in front of you, your left, your right, all at the same time, and it's going to make you very prone to being flanked. There is also cover conveniently placed to hide the enemies so they can't be mowed down while they spawn in, unlike other maps, which makes it harder than it needs to be. And finally, the map lacks any funnel locations, and what I mean by that is there's no spots on this map where you can make all the enemies congregate in one central location with one entrance. It's very open so the enemies can come in from many different ways at the same time and just overwhelm you. Moving on, the second map that I don't recommend is the one that takes place in the forest. There is a lot, and I mean a lot of trees in this particular area that they chose to make this map. And you might think that means a lot of cover, but really all that grass and foliage just blocks your view of the enemies. And if you're on console, it also tanks your frame rate. Taking cover on the trees is very unreliable. A lot of the time you'll end up still exposed to a certain angle, and then you'll end up being shot anyways. The terrain is also very uneven, which makes it harder to locate enemies. They also kind of blend into the environment, which again makes it harder to see them. It lacks a funnel location, much like the Zancudo map, so you can't control where you want the enemies to come from. And I think that's pretty much all I have to say for this map. One thing I do like though is how it has a little narrative to it, like you're fighting off raiders after a plane crash. That's kind of cool. The last map that I don't recommend is the Grove Street Survival. Now, I will admit the lore is cool. You're fighting Ballas on Grove Street, just like in the story mode and like in San Andreas way back in the day, but I just find this map very chaotic with not enough cover. Out of the three so far though, this one is definitely the most tolerable. The enemy spawns aren't blocked, so you can very easily mow them down if you know where they're spawning in at. A lot of the time they'll spawn way down the street, which is literally no man's land. There's no cover there, you could just mow them down easily. I just feel like it's really small and cramped for the amount of enemies that appear though. I had a hard time finding a good spot to take cover to survive for long periods of time on this map. So those are the three that I don't recommend. I didn't give strategies for those maps because I feel that you're way better off doing the ones that I do recommend, just for the sole fact that they're much easier and then they pay the same as the ones that are harder, so why would you do the harder ones? The next three are in no particular order in terms of their difficulty and design. I feel like these are each kind of around the same difficulty, but there is one map that is way easier than all the other maps on this list for one reason, and we're going to get to that at the end of this video. But up first, I recommend the Nuclear Missile Silo map. This one is the most unique out of all the maps in my opinion, as it takes place completely in an interior building. There's no exterior to this map at all. And for that reason, instead of helicopters, you have juggernauts that come after you. And they aren't that difficult to take down. These aren't the invisible juggernauts that you see in the Doomsday Heist. This one I found the easiest to run and gun in instead of taking cover. Basically how the design of this map works, there are 3 floors that are structurally identical to one another. Enemies will spawn in these little hallways that have one entrance, so it's very easy to mow them down when they all come out of that one doorway. You can also use these to your advantage to take cover and hide in, as there's only one way for the enemies to come in, just like there's only one way for the enemies to come out of those doorways. They're very good for funneling the enemies to your location. A couple of spots I recommend are the one I just mentioned in those little hallways where the enemies spawn. If you're wondering if the enemies spawn on top of you while you're in there, that hasn't ever happened to me, so I don't think you have to worry about that. But if you don't want to use that spot, then there's another one I recommend sitting in, and that is this spot on the first floor. They can't come up behind you since there is a locked door behind you, and you have some pretty good cover here. Most of the enemies will come within shotgun range, so you can easily take them out with the auto shotty. However, you can still get overrun once a lot of enemies come in here, so if you're playing this solo, you might struggle a lot with it in the later rounds. There are just a couple of gripes I have with this map in particular. Number one, it's really big, way bigger than the other maps. And number two, since there is a lot of verticality to this map, with it having multiple floors, it can be kind of hard to determine if an enemy is on your floor, or above you, or below you. You might get caught staring at your minimap and then get shot trying to decide. There's an indicator, but it's very subtle and hard to read accurately, especially when there are lots of red dots on the map. Like, I found myself a lot of the time going up the stairs and then realizing he's downstairs and going down the stairs and trying to find him. It just gets annoying. Next is the Farmhouse survival map. This one takes place in the O'Neill's ranch out in Grapeseed. I personally like this map just because it has that kind of protect the house vibe, where you have to defend an area from attackers, kind of like that one mission in MW2 where you're defending the estate. If you want to easily funnel the enemies to your location, you can just camp at the top of the staircase and wait for them to come up, because that is the only way for them to get you up there. It will take forever though on higher rounds. The other room I recommend is this one right here next to the door. It's kind of hard to find places to take cover on this one because there are just so many windows and weird lines of sight that you can get shot through. But this room in particular only has two small windows, so it's kind of hard to get shot through those. This also works against you though. If you're trying to shoot an enemy from inside of the house, you have to get these really weird angles firing through the small windows to hit them. And if you see an enemy through the bars on the railing on the balcony, it doesn't let you auto-lock onto the enemy, which can be a pain sometimes. I also really do not recommend doing this map solo, because if you do try to shoot at the enemies from upstairs, if you aren't solely guarding the staircase, an enemy will just sneak up behind you and kill you. The Meth Lab survival is kind of similar to the Farmhouse one in the sense that it gives off that protect the house vibe, except this one's on a much smaller scale and it's not a house you're protecting, it's a meth lab. But personally, this one is my favorite in terms of fun. I really enjoyed playing this map with my friends. My recommended strategy is having at least two players. You have one player behind the counter guarding the downstairs entrance of the convenience store area, and then you have the friend guard the staircase so the enemies can't come up behind you, because trust me, they will come up behind you if you don't have someone guarding that staircase. If you're doing this map solo, I do not recommend that tactic though. Trying to watch two places that are not in your field of view at the same time is just a recipe for disaster. Instead, you want to hop on the tip top of the roof by getting on this thing here and then climbing up. Funny thing is, this was actually an old strat that I used to use back when, I forget the adversary mode's name, but it was way, like a long time ago. There was a map that took place here, and if you got on the tip top of the roof here, you were pretty much invincible. And sure enough, it works just as good here in the survival mode. You can watch almost all of the enemy spawns from this one location, and it's kind of hard for them to shoot you since you're so high up. Now, if all you care about is getting the most money as possible and doing things as efficiently as possible, then you're definitely going to want to play on this Stab City survival map. Once the game starts, simply hop into this orange dumpster right here and bam, you can now get as many rounds as you'd like with hardly any effort at all. This dumpster literally could not be any more perfect. First of all, its height is just low enough so you can aim your gun and shoot over it. It may look like you're shooting the dumpster, and if you are struggling to shoot over the wall, you can either take cover or go into first person and then take a couple steps back, and then you should be able to shoot over it then. You can just see the enemies' heads over the wall, which first of all looks really funny, but it allows you to get very easy kills on them, and the enemies have the hardest time hitting you. Even on the very, late rounds, 95% of the time, the only damage you will take will come from the helicopters that spawn in. It's also positioned in the perfect location. You can see all three of the enemy spawn points, and you can very easily shoot the enemies out of their spawns. And then once the round ends, you can just hop out, get ammo or health or whatever you need, and then hop back in for the next one. Soloing the map with this is not a problem at all either. I don't recommend putting more than two people in the dumpster though, otherwise you're going to start to block each other's shots and it's going to be not as effective. We did this with 3 people, and we put the last guy in a room that is actually just to the left when you jump out of this dumpster. And this is by far the most efficient way of completing and advancing through survivals. You don't have to wait forever for the AI to finally come up the stairs so you can kill them. The enemies like to come very close to the dumpster. It's pretty much as close as you're going to get to a wall breach without it actually being a wall breach. It only took us an hour to get to wave 21 using this method, and speaking of higher waves, what exactly happens once you get past wave 10? So, each subsequent wave after 10 is what is called a bonus wave. Each one modifies the game to make it harder for you. The first thing that happens at wave 11 is the armor pickups get removed from the map. Then at wave 12, enemy combat ability increases, which I'm assuming means accuracy and movement increases. At least that's what it felt like to me. At wave 13, the number of enemies increases. At wave 14, enemy health and armor increases. At wave 15, health pickups are removed. That makes it really hard. And then after that, it just keeps cycling through the enemy health increasing, combat ability increasing, and then the number of enemies increasing. We decided to stop at wave 21 because it didn't look like anything else was changing. It was just the same modifiers. I was kind of hoping for it to like remove our map or something to make it really difficult, or maybe spawn enemies in that used explosives, but that wasn't the case. It's kind of unfortunate. But for completing 20 waves of survival with double money, we earned $165,000. I read somewhere that the max payout was 150,000. It doesn't look like that's the case. And like I said, this took us around an hour to get this far, so honestly, it's not that much money considering it's double money. I think you can make more in an hour doing other things. Without the double money, it really would not be that much at all. To end the video, I just want to give you guys a few general tips that could help in any of the survival maps and modes, not just the new ones. The first one is to use pickups in a timely manner. After completing a round, new pickups will spawn, so if you have multiple people that need health or armor, just like in Call of Duty Zombies, save one guy, let one or two people pick up the drops on the map at that time if they're still there, then kill the last guy, and then when the new pickup spawn, let the other people get their health and armor so you're all ready for the next wave. Second tip, make sure you're stocked up on snacks. These will save your life, especially if you're the only one left on your team. Have them and use them as you see fit. And lastly, use your flare gun to start fires. This one probably sounds weird, but allow me to explain. If you are funneling a bunch of enemies into an area, it's likely that there's going to be a bunch of dead bodies just laying there. Well, if you take out your flare gun and shoot any of those dead bodies, it's going to start a fire which will block that entrance for a short time and set any NPC on fire that tries to get through. Now you might be saying, why don't you just use Molotovs for that? Well, yeah, you can do that. You can use Molotovs. But Molotovs can't be bought, and flares are very cheap in cost, so, it's a good tip to know. Anyways, that is going to conclude my survival guide. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, feel free to leave a like, as well as subscribe to my channel for more guide and PvP related content. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.